April 10th, 2017, Fort Worth, Texas. In exactly 6 hours, a mother will make a discovery that will not only destroy her world, but expose a predator who's been hiding in plain sight for 5 years. A Monday morning, rush hour traffic, coffee shops opening, students heading to class. An ordinary day, until it wasn't. Let's go back. 6 hours earlier. Molly Jane Matheson should be getting ready for work right now. 22 years old, full of life, full of plans. But inside her garage apartment, just blocks from Texas Christian University, something has already gone terribly wrong. By 9 a.m., Molly's shift has started. But Molly isn't there. 2 hours pass. Molly's boss knows something is wrong. This isn't like Molly. Not at all. She calls Molly's emergency contact. Her mother, Tracy. Tracy doesn't hesitate. She gets in her car, speeds toward her daughter's apartment. Her heart already knows what her mind refuses to accept. She enters the apartment, calls Molly's name. Nothing. The bedroom door is open, empty. The kitchen empty. And then the bathroom. What Tracy sees next will haunt her for the rest of her life. Molly, on the shower floor, crumpled, cold, gone. Molly Jane Matheson was raped, strangled, murdered in her own home. But here's what Tracy doesn't know yet, what no one knows yet. The man who did this, she's met him before. She invited him into her home, and he's already hunting his next victim. Quick question, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from and what time is it where you are? To understand the magnitude of what was stolen that April morning, you need to understand who Molly Jane Matheson was. Because the girl who lit up every room she entered was about to become the catalyst for a revolution that would save countless lives. Molly attended the University of Arkansas, where she planned to major in social work. She wanted to help people, to make a difference. She was the kind of person who believed in second chances, in seeing the good in others. Those who knew her described her as brilliant, joy-filled, and full of light. 22 years on this earth, and she'd already touched countless lives. But there was something Tracy didn't know about her daughter, something she'd discover only after Molly's death. Hidden beneath her daughter's clothing was a tattoo. One word, beloved. That word would become the foundation for everything that came next. But before Tracy could honor her daughter's memory, she needed answers. And what police were about to find in Molly's apartment would lead them straight to a killer and uncover a trail of victims he left behind. When Fort Worth police arrived at Molly's apartment, the scene told a chilling story. The killer had been careful, methodical even, but in his arrogance, he made one critical mistake that would seal his fate. The apartment appeared undisturbed. Nothing was missing. There were no signs of forced entry, no indication of a struggle. This wasn't random. This was personal. Detectives Kyle Sullivan and Matt Anderson took the lead. What they discovered would reveal not just one killer, but a predator who'd been operating in the shadows for years. The killer had tried to destroy evidence. He'd washed Molly's body in the shower. He'd done a load of laundry, attempting to erase any trace of his presence. But he'd made a mistake. He'd left his underwear behind. DNA, the most damning evidence of all. But that was just the beginning. Cell phone records placed someone at Molly's apartment the night she died. Electricity usage spiked during hours when Molly should have been alone. Surveillance cameras captured a vehicle arriving late at night. And all the evidence pointed to one person. Someone Molly had known. Someone who had once been in her life. His name was Reginald Kimbro. And when detectives started digging into his past, they discovered something that would turn this murder investigation into a race against time. Reginald Kimbro, 28 years old, charming, charismatic. But behind the smile was a monster who perfected the art of making women trust him, right before he destroyed their lives. Kimbro and Molly had dated years earlier when she attended the University of Arkansas. The relationship had ended. They had no contact anymore. But on the night of April 9th, 2017, Kimbro showed up at Molly's apartment, Kimbro would later tell police that Molly had invited him over. He denied killing her, but the evidence said otherwise. As detectives dug deeper into Reginald Kimbro's past, they discovered something horrifying. Molly wasn't his first victim, not even close. In 2012, a woman in Plano accused Kimbro of throwing her to the ground, choking her, and sexually assaulting her. No arrest was made. In 2014, a woman in South Padre reported being drugged, strangled, and raped. No charges were filed. Also in 2014, a woman in Allen came forward with similar allegations. Again, no prosecution. Prosecutor Elena Bangs would later describe Kimbro this way. He used his personality and charm to attract women, or drugged them when that did not work. He talked his way out of case after case, until his violence culminated in murder. But as Fort Worth police were building their case against Kimbro, they had no idea that just 4 days after Molly's murder, he was about to strike again, and this time, his victim would be a complete stranger. April 14th, 2017, for days after Molly's murder. While detectives were still processing Molly's crime scene, another woman was making what should have been a routine decision, an evening hike that would cost her everything. 36-year-old Megan Gettrum went for an evening hike at Arbor Hills Nature Preserve near her Plano home. She loved these trails. She came here often. It was her sanctuary. She never came back. Megan was a cat lover, a talented artist and photographer, a woman with her whole life ahead of her. When she didn't return home that night, her family knew something was terribly wrong. The next day, her body was found in Lake Ray Hubbard, 30 miles away in Dallas County. She had been raped and strangled. The method was identical to Molly's murder. Same MO, same brutality, same signature. Detectives ran the DNA from Megan's case. The results came back in record time. It was a match. Reginald Kimbro. Unlike Molly, Megan had never met Reginald Kimbro. She was a complete stranger, a random target. Surveillance footage placed Kimbro in the parking lot of Arbor Hills Nature Preserve at the exact time of Megan's disappearance. While under investigation for Molly's murder, Kimbro had killed again. But here's the devastating truth that would haunt everyone involved. If the system had done its job years earlier, both Molly and Megan would still be alive. As Tracy Matheson learned more about her daughter's killer, she began to ask the question that would haunt her. Why was Reginald Kimbro free to kill? What she was about to uncover would reveal a failure so catastrophic, so preventable, that it would change laws across the entire state of Texas. Multiple women had accused Kimbro of rape. The allegations stretched back years. Different cities, different counties. But the cases were never filed, never prosecuted. Tracy began to piece the timeline together. What she discovered was devastating. In 2012, a woman in Plano reported being choked and sexually assaulted by Kimbro. Police investigated, collected evidence, but the case was never filed. In 2014, South Padre, another woman, drugged, strangled, raped. She reported it. Nothing happened. Also in 2014, Allen. Same pattern, same predator, same result, no charges. But here's what Tracy discovered that changed everything. In 2012, after that first reported rape in Plano, police actually had Kimbro's DNA. They had witness statements. They had enough to arrest him. The detective working the case wanted to move forward, but the case sat on a prosecutor's desk for months, then years, and was never filed. The 2014 cases? Same story. Evidence collected. Victims believed by the investigating officers. Then nothing. The cases disappeared into bureaucratic limbo. And here's the most damning part. None of these police departments talked to each other. Plano didn't know about South Padre. Allen didn't know about Plano. The pattern was right there, but no one connected the dots. In Tracy's words, when I kind of pieced all that together, I was like, wait, she could be alive had someone done their job, had someone believed. If that Plano case had been prosecuted in 2012, Kimbro would have been in prison. Molly would have graduated college, pursued her social work degree, lived her life. The justice system didn't just fail, it enabled a predator. And Molly and Megan paid the ultimate price. Tracy was about to discover something even more disturbing: the true number of Kimbro's victims. But first, she needed to see him face justice. And what happened next would shock everyone. Molly's murder trial was set to begin in 2020. Tarrant County prosecutors planned to seek the death penalty. But after 5 years of denials, delays, and legal maneuvering, no one was prepared for what Reginald Kimbro would do next. They had DNA. They had witnesses. They had an airtight case. But then COVID-19 hit. The trial was delayed, and delayed again. Tracy and David Matheson waited. Molly's case, along with the justice she deserved, was put on hold. Years passed. The Mathesons watched other trials happen, other cases resolved, but not Molly's. The waiting was agony. And then, in March 2022, nearly 5 years after Molly's murder, Tracy received an unexpected phone call from the prosecutors. What they told her would shock everyone. Reginald Kimbro, the man who had denied killing Molly for 5 years, who had maintained his innocence, who was prepared to go to trial, had suddenly agreed to plead guilty, not just to Molly's murder, to everything. Guilty to the rape and murder of Molly Jane Matheson. Guilty to the rape and murder of Megan Gettrum. Guilty to 4 additional sexual assaults in Plano, Allen, McKinney, and South Padre. 6 different crimes for different counties. 5 years of terror. And Kimbro was admitting to all of it. The sudden turn stunned everyone. Why now? After 5 years of delays and denials? Prosecutors believe Kimbro knew he was cornered. The evidence was overwhelming. The survivors were ready to testify, and he couldn't talk his way out anymore. On March 18th, 2022, Reginald Kimbro stood before the court and spoke 2 words he'd avoided for 5 years. I'm guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He will die behind bars.
Charged with murdering 2 women, will spend the rest of his life in prison without the chance of parole. Reginald Kimbro pleaded guilty in Fort Worth courtroom to multiple sexual assaults as well. NBC5's David Goins was in the courtroom for the plea deal, covering 5 years of violent crimes.
It took a long time to get here.
But Tracy Matheson says there is some relief tonight after getting to this day, when the man who prosecutors said killed her daughter admitted in open court his responsibility in Molly Matheson's murder. In exchange for his guilty plea, Reginald Kimbro will spend the rest of his life in prison with no...
Dozens of people gathered in the courtroom for victim impact statements. The families of Molly and Megan, the 4 other women who had survived Kimbro's attacks. David Matheson looked at Kimbro and said, I honestly have nothing to say to you. You don't exist. You don't occupy any space in my head. You never will. You are the definition of a coward.
I honestly have nothing to say to you. You don't exist. You don't occupy any space in my head, and you never will. You're the definition of a coward.
But it was Tracy's words that would define what came next. Because for Tracy, this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of a mission that would transform the way America treats survivors of assault. For most people, getting justice for their murdered child would be the end of the story. But Tracy Matheson isn't most people. And what she was about to build from the ashes of her grief would create a ripple effect that's still spreading across America today. Tracy channeled her grief into action. She created Project Beloved, the Molly Jane mission. Named after that tattoo she'd never known her daughter had. The mission to advocate for sexual assault victims and survivors,
which seeks
to
to
change the
sexual assault
conversation,
survivors.
to prevent what happened to Molly from happening to anyone else. The first initiative was Beloved Bundles. Tracy learned that when women go to hospital for rape exams, their clothes are often taken as evidence. They leave the hospital in paper scrubs or borrowed clothes, stripped of dignity in their most vulnerable moment. So Tracy created bundles filled with personal hygiene items, comfortable clothing, and even coloring books. Something therapeutic, something comforting, something to help survivors walk out with dignity. These bundles have been sent to rape crisis centers and hospitals across the nation. She also established social work scholarships at the University of Arkansas, honoring the degree Molly had planned to pursue. Each scholarship is given in $2,200 increments. 22 years, $2,200. A permanent reminder of Molly's too short life. But Tracy knew that bundles and scholarships, while meaningful, weren't enough. The system that had failed Molly needed to change. So Tracy did something unprecedented. She took on the entire Texas legislature. And what she accomplished would ensure that no predator like Reginald Kimbro could ever slip through the cracks again. In 2019, Tracy and David Matheson championed Texas House Bill 3106. Most people grieving their murdered child can barely get out of bed. Tracy Matheson went to war with bureaucracy and won. On September that year, it was signed into law by the governor. It's now officially known as Molly Jane's Law. The law requires all Texas law enforcement agencies to enter information about sex offenses into VICE-AP, the FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program. VICE-AP was designed in the 1980s to help identify serial attackers by connecting cases across jurisdictions. But it wasn't always used. Information sat in individual police departments, never shared, never analyzed for patterns. Molly Jane's Law changed that. Now, every sexual assault case in Texas must be entered into the database. Patterns can be identified. Serial offenders can be caught earlier. In fact, just months after the law took effect, it was used to track down a sexual assault suspect in Tarrant County who had attacked multiple women across different cities. The system was working. Lives were being saved. Tracy's message was clear. She could be alive had someone done their job, had someone believed. Molly Jane's Law ensures that next time, someone will believe. Someone will connect the dots. But changing the law was only half the battle. Tracy realized that even when survivors report their assaults, the way they're treated by the system can be almost as traumatic as the crime itself. So she set out to change that too. Tracy had learned something else disturbing about the way sexual assault victims are treated. Imagine surviving the worst night of your life, then being interrogated in the same cold room where murderers confess. That's the reality for most assault survivors. Until Tracy decided to change it. After experiencing unimaginable trauma, survivors are brought into stark, cold police interview rooms. Hard chairs, fluorescent lights, concrete walls. The same rooms used to interrogate suspects and criminals. Research shows that trauma affects how victims' brains work, how they remember, how they process information. Being forced to recount a sexual assault in an intimidating environment can be re-traumatizing. It can actually prevent victims from remembering crucial details that could solve cases. So Project Beloved began creating soft interview rooms at police departments across the country. Comfortable chairs, warm lighting, blankets, rugs, plants, small touches that show survivors are believed and supported. On the walls of each room are framed photographs taken by Megan Gettrum, Kimbro's other murder victim. 3 of her nature photos in every room. A way to weave Megan's story with Molly's. A reminder that these rooms come at a very high cost. To date, Project Beloved has installed more than 42 soft interview rooms across the United States. In Houston, in Kansas City, in Charlottesville, at the Virginia Military Institute, the first on a college campus in Virginia. Police departments report that victims feel more comfortable in these spaces. They're able to provide more detailed information. Cases are being solved because survivors feel safe enough to remember. The rooms are making a real difference. The waiting list now stretches into 2025. Tracy says it simply, we're taking the darkness and bringing light to it. But as Tracy built these rooms and changed these laws, she was also uncovering something that would shake her to her core, the true scope of Reginald Kimbro's reign of terror. Molly Jane Matheson and Megan Gettrum were murdered, but they weren't Reginald Kimbro's only victims. For survivors came forward to testify. But as Tracy dug deeper, She realized the horror was far worse than anyone had imagined. After Kimbro was arrested, 4 other women came forward. Women who had been assaulted years earlier. Women who had tried to report. Women who hadn't been believed or whose cases had never been filed. But as Tracy worked with these survivors, preparing for trial, she discovered something that would shake her to her core. There weren't just 4 other victims. There were more, many more. During the investigation, detectives found evidence suggesting Kimbro may have assaulted as many as 12 additional women. Women who never reported. Women who were too afraid. Women who didn't think they'd be believed. Different cities, different years. A decade-long reign of terror that no one had connected. Because Kimbro was smart, he moved around. He targeted women who were vulnerable, who were isolated, who he thought wouldn't fight back. Tracy realized the full scope of what systemic failure really meant. This wasn't just about Molly anymore. It was about dozens of women whose lives were destroyed because the system didn't protect them. At Kimbro's sentencing, some of these survivors chose to speak. Katie Coates and Melissa Winton stood alongside Tracy Matheson, 3 women connected by unimaginable trauma, connected by the same predator. All 4 survivors who testified described being drugged, being strangled, being raped. They described reporting their assaults and watching as nothing happened. As Kimbro walked free to attack again, and again, and again, one survivor said, "I told them what happened. I gave them everything. And then I watched him walk away. And I knew he'd do it again." These women had the courage to come forward twice. First when they were assaulted, and then again at Kimbro's trial, prepared to testify, to face their attacker in court. Tracy has joined forces with these survivors. Together, they speak at conferences on crimes against women. They share their stories. They educate law enforcement. They advocate for change. Because the mission isn't just about Molly anymore. It's about every victim who hasn't been heard. Every survivor who hasn't been believed. Every woman who might have been saved if someone had just listened the first time.
If there are bright spots in this journey, for me, it has been hearing from you on random days. Hey, happy Mother's Day. Hey, I'm thinking of you. You're in my prayers.
I love it. Y'all are gonna be the only people who can ever probably, truly understand me.
Each of you give me so much strength and just support, and I need that.
Oh, I know.
I don't know what I would do without you guys.
Same.
So, how do you move forward when the system failed you so catastrophically? How do you turn the darkest day of your life into something that saves others? Tracy Matheson is about to show us. April 10th will forever be a day of significance for the Matheson family. The day everything changed. The day their daughter, their light, was extinguished. But what Tracy did with that darkness would illuminate a path for thousands of survivors who came after. Tracy Matheson had a choice. She could let that darkness consume her, or she could fight back. At Reginald Kimbro's sentencing, Tracy looked him in the eyes and said, "No longer will you be able to sit behind a lie of innocence. The light, Molly's brilliant, joy-filled, bright light, will shine over the darkness brought by your cowardly decisions."
Molly's brilliant, joy-filled, bright light will shine over the darkness brought by your cowardly decision.
Her light is the fuel for the revolution. 5 years after Molly's murder, Tracy's words have proven prophetic. Molly Jane's law is changing how Texas investigates sexual assault, and other states are now following Texas's lead. Soft interview rooms are spreading across the country. 42 installed, with dozens more on waiting lists. Survivors are finding their voices. The conversation about sexual assault is changing. Since Molly Jane's law passed, Texas has seen a 23% increase in serial predators being identified and caught. The soft interview rooms have led to a 31% increase in successful prosecutions. Real numbers, real impact, Real lives saved. Tracy says she'll spend the rest of her days making sure this battle is won. That Molly's story impacts change. That her daughters' 22 years on Earth matter. Molly wanted to be a social worker. She wanted to help people, to make a difference. In the end, she did, through her mother's work, through her legacy, through Project Beloved, the Molly Jane mission. Today, thousands of survivors have received Beloved bundles. Students are earning social work degrees through Molly scholarships. Police departments across America are treating victims with dignity. And serial predators are being caught before they can kill. This is not the end of Molly's story. Her light continues to shine. And in that light, other survivors are finding hope, finding justice, finding their voices. Molly Jane Matheson was beloved in life, and she remains beloved in death. Her mission lives on. Reginald Kimbro took Molly's future, but he couldn't take her impact. He couldn't silence her voice, because Tracy made sure of that. Sometimes the darkest tragedies spark the brightest revolutions. This is Molly's revolution, and it's only just beginning.